This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on a choice. Get on mandate. Get it on and welcome the best hour or so in the universe. It is Mark. Hard out, short window, Garrigus in studio, everybody.
I want you to know, Gary, what did I tell you?
You told me 50-50 leaning studio.
Yeah. So I figured,
good.
for the election season, I've come up with a new thing, 50-50 leaning studio. And I was to some degree, I'll give you kind of my week in a short nutshell. There was 12 minutes span, I think, on Wednesday afternoon. And the first 6 minutes, I was screaming at an opposing counsel. And it was somebody that I actually liked, but he had pulled such a stunt. And then right after that, I had another opposing counsel call, back to back. And this guy, I kind of vented so much that I told the guy, I said, you really get the benefit of me calling this other guy out on the carpet. And I gave him what he wanted. The first guy gave me what I wanted, and all went well after 12 minutes. And somebody was saying that's the longest attention span you've ever had, that 12 minutes. I said, no, I was just angry. And then this morning, same thing. You catch somebody pulling a stunt. I hate it when they do that. Because there's an assumption that you've been dropped on your head. And that
the stunt is insulting because the fact that they would even try it suggests what they think of you.
It's exactly
that you're not
right.
a capable attorney.
Right. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know the game you're playing.
Right.
This is like, law 101 and it boils my blood. So I was getting so aggravated that I said, I'm going to move heaven and earth. I got to see Adam because I want to laugh.
Well, first thing that just popped into mind is I was listening to the news a few days ago on my commute. I heard them talking about looking for the guy who planted the microphone or who secretly recorded the L.A. County supervisors.
The city council meeting.
Yeah, the Hispanic folks making fun of the nationality of the Armo, which didn't get much attraction, but the black kid did.
Yeah, it was black versus brown, but where's the green in between?
No love for
Armo?
the Armos. No love. But they said that they were saying, well, there wasn't much precedent for prosecuting the guy who secretly whatever. It just doesn't happen very often. And then they thought, not since. And I thought, not since Garrigus was on an airplane with Michael Jackson. And they said since 1996 when Mark Garrigus was on an airplane with Michael Jackson from Vegas to Neverland,
right.
I think a private jet, and somebody planted a video recorder.
The private
what year
jet
was
operator, 2003-ish.
Oh, okay.
2004-ish. And he put a pinhole camera in the jet, wired it up. And so we land, and we post the bail, and we get him out, and he wanted to drive back to Vegas. I said, that's fine. Then that afternoon or that evening, Greta Van Susteren, who I think was with CNN, that was before she'd gone with Fox, but maybe she was at Fox. Greta calls me and says, I don't know if you know it, but there's a guy peddling a tape of you and Michael Jackson on the jet. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, yeah, this lawyer just offered it to us for $1 million. I think it was Fox. And I said, what the hell? And she gave me the guy who was peddling it. I call him up and I said, have you lost your mind? It's an attorney-client conversation. It's obviously illegally done. And he said, no, I'll never forget his quote. Yeah, my client understands that, but, this is his lottery ticket.
Wow.
Right. So went into court, got an emergency writ to go seize it. The judge granted it. Before I could get there, the FBI was there. They seized the tape, and they prosecuted this guy. I don't think he's alive anymore. I think his name was Jeff Bohr. And he ended up...
The attorney or the owner of
the owner of the jet who actually
Extrajet.
did it. Extrajet, exactly. Was it Jeff Bohr?
Jeffrey Bohr, yeah. You have a great memory.
Wow. I mean, it's almost 16 years ago. But there's a funny aside to this that you'll enjoy. Apparently, they prosecute him. He gets convicted. He does his time. He's now died. But during that interim, after he was prosecuted, Michael and I sued this guy for the invasion and violation. We went to a court trial, and the judge awarded Pat Harris, my partner who was on the plane with me, and me. I think Pat got $2 million and I got like $18 million. We got awarded by that. So they take it up to the Court of Appeal. And I send one of my new lawyers in. I'm thinking, what's the matter with this? How can I lose this? She gets up to stand up, and I think the first question of the Court of Appeals Justice mouth was something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing. You mean to tell me that Mr. Garrigus is that upset that he gets $18 million for being on a tape? I've seen him on TV for a lot less or something like that. So then the opinion is either take $750 or we're vacating the $18 million verdict. I said, I'm not taking $750. So we go back, set it for trial, and we end up getting, I forget what it was, $2.5 million or something like that.
Wow.
But Michael had been advised to pull out, I guess, and not pursue it, or I forget what the terms were.
Well, that's the part famously doctored in the Jackson dock.
Exactly.
Where you're up in front on the steps of the courthouse screaming that this is unacceptable, and anybody who tries any of these shenanigans, and of course they cut it out as if you were saying any 8-year-old who comes forward, she'll feel the sting of my boot upon their neck. And it was like,
you're so right. What a memory. You have got crystal brain comes through. I
was watching. That. I was like, I get it. Mark's a douchebag, but he's not world class. He's Olympic caliber douche. I remember. But when
telling 8-year-olds, I'm going to come down on you like a ton of bricks.
Yes, they wouldn't. He wouldn't say that. But, you're not used to docs being, pardon the pun, doctored. But they very much are these days.
Well, which is interesting. Goes right into our first story. There's quite a hubbub right now about the Casey Anthony documentary. Mm-hmm. And, in fact, I did something with Marcia Clark and Megyn Kelly the other day, talking about it. And Marcia looked great and
got up
really
the hot iron.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And Megyn has always looked great. And you can I'm an old white guy, so I can be politically incorrect and say women look great. And Marcia was really up to speed on the facts in the Casey Anthony case and in this documentary, because apparently she'd done an A&E special on it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, people are going bonkers on Twitter about the fact that I believe it's Peacock, which is a division of NBC, produced this documentary on Casey Anthony and apparently paid her. And people are going nuts about it. Here's the...
Right.
You got it up.
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit. The dad getting thrown under the bus is the real twist in this thing. I don't know what you know about the nuts and the bolts. I can hear your voice ring in my head because you hear all the yentas going, she was out partying. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't make her a murderer. That just means she had poor judgment or she liked to party.
And by the way, Jose, I give Jose Baez credit for going on, and Megyn was trying to surgically dismantle him on her show.
Yes.
And Jose's point was...
Who is Jose?
Baez. He did that case, and he also did
he was
Hernandez.
Her attorney.
He was her attorney. He was the lead attorney. And he did Hernandez when he was acquitted up in Massachusetts.
Correct.
Where they got the verdict, not guilty, and then committed suicide
Hernandez.
The next
right.
day. So Jose, in his opening statement, talked about the father, the alleged, that he came in carrying the kid had drowned, blah, blah, blah. But had then was getting excoriated, both in the press, and Megyn was on that as well, about the fact that he said it in opening but didn't prove it. Mm-hmm. And Jose was explaining that he had a good faith belief. And Megyn said, well, what is that good faith belief? And he said, I can't say it. And what he was trying to say, I believe, is that at the beginning of a case, he doesn't know if he's going to put his client on. Mm-hmm. But he has to know if he puts his client on, and from talking to me, that's as a last resort. But if the case starts to go south, you really have to think about that, and you got to be prepared. But when you do your opening statement, you know what your client will say. So in his opening statement, he's got a good faith belief. This is, if I put her on the stand, this is what she's going to say. My dad came in, my dad found her, she had drowned, and then talk about the abuse with her dad, blah, blah, blah. Well, he never had to get to that point because the prosecution's case really imploded in a lot of ways. And so he was getting hammered. They were saying, well, what's your good faith belief? Let me interpret what he was trying to say but didn't want to say. He was saying my good faith belief is this is what my client told me, and I checked it out, and it fit with the evidence. But I can't tell you this is what my client told me because that would violate the attorney-client privilege. So that's kind of an interesting
What is your summation of the case?
I think that they overcharged the hell out of it, and she's a pretty female, and that optically, if you've got the right jury, they're going to give her the benefit of the doubt. If you had the wrong jury, they might not have. If you had a different-looking defendant who was like Richard Allen Davis, the guy who kidnapped out of her bedroom Polly Klaus. Yeah. You have that guy there, the poster child for,
Yes, that guy looked very guilty.
I mean, he was tatted up and been in prison, and
right.
And I mean, so you're up against it. You're really up against it. And to some degree, with the right jury, when you play she was out partying, she was doing this, she was doing that, sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. I mean, certain people. I mean, you're always going to have the amen choir, the prosecution choir, who's going to be saying, "Oh, she didn't act right. She didn't act right." But there are other people who say, "Well, what's the playbook for that?"
Well, again, I kind of file it in, and they go, you can hear on the 911 call the person barely sounded upset, and I'm like, yeah, but that's still neither here nor there in terms of whether they did it or not. I always kind of make the argument that if they did kill their wife in the bathtub, they would step on a thumbtack, bring some tears, and then make the 911 call. Like they would factor that one in.
You're so funny. My ex-partner who's he's currently litigating along with Cliff Harris, the Peterson case. Pat Harris used to have this 5-minute line or kind of shtick that he would do about how it didn't act right. He says, if my wife ever goes missing and the police come, I'm going to be screaming, "Oh my God!
Yeah, take me.
Yeah, take me, not her!"
Right.
And you're going to be going through it because God forbid if you're cool, calm, and collected, that's the worst thing you can do.
So what do you think happened
with her?
Day? Yeah, with Casey Anthony and Kylie.
The thing that I never...
Or whatever the name of the daughter was.
I think it was Kaylee.
Sorry.
Kaylee. The worst fact in that case that is troubling to me, and I wish maybe we'll have Jose come in and phone in, is the 31 days to report it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's hard to explain.
Why she didn't report it.
Yeah.
And her saying that she was scared of her dad and, whatever. But there seems to be a lot of footage of her talking shit about her dad. She doesn't seem intimidated by her dad, at least now.
Well, not now. Clearly not now.
So
then there was another fact that everybody keeps talking about is her brother's testimony, right, Gary? I think that was... And Jose had mentioned that too, and that's interesting. And it is clear to me that the reason or the kind of baseline for why she was acquitted is overcharging, number one, and he proved beyond a reasonable doubt that this was a highly dysfunctional family.
How does overcharging factor in?
Because if you're telling somebody, we want you to put somebody to death, that brings home, in my opinion, the real kind of
so they were going
burden
for death.
Of proof, yeah.
Oh, so if that were you, you would have said, let's go with murder one, but not with death penalty.
If I'm the prosecutor, I would have said murder one and then let the jury compromise down. Because that's basically what the L.A. County DA's office traditionally has done. I mean, even though they have death penalty cases, in fact, the reason I was thinking about this is Kurt Livesey, who became memorialized in the Livesey letter here in L.A., just passed away. His memorial was last night, and I didn't get there, and I feel awful. But Livesey was legendary for being able to, through every administration, as long as I was practicing, to be able to differentiate what, I'm against the death penalty, but he would pick the appropriate case. He had just great acumen for saying, yeah, this person, if what we prove is true, this person really doesn't belong on the planet Earth. I mean, I disagree with the idea of the death penalty because I think humans are so fallible, but at the same time, you have to respect somebody who can make a reasoned decision. This is the law. This is what I'm going to apply.
Well, you were kind of prognosticating and pontificating about the case with That 70s Show, name escapes me.
Danny Masterson.
Masterson. That got a mistrial, right?
That was Phil Cohen, who I know, who tried the case and defended Danny. I can only imagine his head exploding during that case, because I've talked to people who were in the courtroom watching that trial, and they said that his cross-examination of the complaining witnesses was masterful. He said it was really a thing of beauty. And I've tried, 2 or 3 trials with Phil, 2 verdict and either acquittals or hung juries, and he's great. He's got chops. Now, so I'm getting that. I'm hearing that. And I know that judge, and I've told you that. I know that judge, I think, fairly well, and I've tried a case in front of her. So when the jury comes back after 3 days and says, on a Friday afternoon, as you know, at the bewitching hour, and says, we're hopelessly hung, to send them out for 10 days and wait over the Thanksgiving break and then expect that nothing untoward is going to happen is ridiculous. And sure enough, 2 of them do get COVID,
right.
Pulls them out. They substitute 2 in. They come back hopelessly deadlocked. Do you know what the split was in this case, too, which is amazing? I think 10-2, 8-4, and 6-5, all tilting towards not guilty. All tilting towards not guilty.
Wait, how do you have all those? How do you have 10
3 counts, and they had different splits on each count.
Right.
So they were actually, and I always say this, in most cases, jurors are diligent. They'll analyze something, and it's obvious here that certain jurors felt this witness was compelling, this witness wasn't compelling, but overall they never got a majority of the jurors to say he's guilty.
Is Masterson incarcerated now?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, yes.
As we're sitting here, down the hall is Harvey Weinstein. And Harvey, this is another thing you're going to love. They did the closing today and yesterday, Friday and Thursday. Alan Jackson, who's Mark Worksman's partner, are the 2 guys trying this case. Alan Jackson, apparently, I haven't talked to him. I wasn't in the courtroom. I'm just going by the reports. His description, Gary, do you have his description of Gavin Newsom's wife?
Oh, boy. It's going to be good.
He said she gave a quote, theatrical, overly dramatized performance because she was embarrassed she'd had consensual transactional sex. It was a theatrical, overly dramatized performance. What you saw was an act, a pretty good act, but it had no basis in truth. It was almost like it was on cue. It was almost like it was rehearsed. Just because she cried the hardest or yelled the loudest, it does not change any of the facts. He went on to say she cannot square in her mind the idea that she's a successful, well-educated, well-bred, refined woman who had consensual sex with Harvey Weinstein in exchange for opportunity and access.
Wow.
And then he showed the jury her emails after the supposed rape.
2 years later.
Yeah,
or
well,
so.
2 years later, she was looking for advice. After that,
Right.
she's asking for campaign contributions
after
from
that.
the rapist to
Wow.
Gavin. Yeah, and Gavin is squirreled away somewhere in the courthouse.
I thought it was interesting that the defense closing lasted over 4 hours.
Yeah.
Is that typical?
I think the longest I've gone 4 hours, but that's usually on a case that's lasted 6 months or something like that, and that was in the old days. Now, people have no attention span because linear TV completely ruined them. I mean, basically it's a drama.
Masterson got a mistrial.
Got a mistrial.
They're going to retry it?
They haven't announced yet. Also on the hallway.
Do you think they will?
Yeah, because they can't give up.
Why
I think
with those kind of splits can they not walk away?
I saw that they set a new date for March.
Yeah, and they'll file what's called a motion under 1385 to have the judge dismiss the counts. Can I make a prediction right now? This judge is not going to dismiss the counts. Across the hall, I think his name is Kia Morgan. He was charged with the embezzlement from Stan Lee, the Marvel Comics guy. He got his jury hung last week, 11-1 for not guilty. And unlike Sheriff Baca, who was retried after 11-1 for not guilty, this judge, I believe Lamelli, dismissed the case.
11 said not guilty.
Not guilty.
So, as we've talked about, if the split is the majority said not guilty, then they might not retry. Right. Where are you philosophically, or what can you tell us that we don't know about this thing where somebody accuses you of something, you go in, you spend a bunch of resources and time, and everything's very considerable and not whatever the emotional toll it takes when they're talking about going to prison for 25 years. And after the entire thing, the jury cannot reach a conclusion. They cannot say that you're guilty. It seems patently unfair to me that the state or the city just goes, well, we're going to do it again. Yeah, it doesn't feel fair to me for the person who just went through that process, but where do you come down? I
have never understood it. I don't understand why. It is the law that if you don't get a acquittal, the only two things in the law that you can't appeal, really, in the criminal law, basically, are a pardon, presidential pardon, or a gubernatorial and commutation, and a not guilty. You can't appeal those. You can appeal a guilty verdict. You could get reversed. You could come back again. But the idea is that since a mistrial based on a hung jury is not a verdict, that therefore they can retry it.
See, I argue a hung jury is a verdict because
it's interesting. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into it with a judge because during voir dire, I will say to the jurors, "You understand there's three possible outcomes here, and all are good, are fine. Not guilty, guilty, and a hung jury. Hung jury is perfectly fine. There's nothing in the law that says you can't have a hung jury. In fact, in some ways, it shows that you've listened to the evidence, you've formulated it and deliberated, and that's your stand. You're not going to just, I'll also ask jurors, 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Sometimes I'll say 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. It's 11-1. You're the one. Whichever way it goes, guilty or not guilty. Are you going to roll just because you don't want to come back on Monday?
Mm-hmm.
And
all right, I got a spot, but we got some breaking Twitter, Elon Musk, Hunter Biden stuff to get into as well. First, there's Pluralsight. Helping your employees learn new cloud skills helps your business become more agile, more resilient, and more secure. Not helping employees learn new cloud skills causes your business to become less agile, less resilient, less secure, less profitable. Let's not forget about that. Less innovative. You want to get Pluralsight, and you don't want less business. So let's get more business. So with Pluralsight, don't become less of a business. Try Pluralsight and get your employees anything they need to learn the new cloud skills. Learn more at pluralsight.com/vision. So as we tape this, news is coming out that Elon is going to talk about some of the Hunter Biden stuff. He's going to release the we have the tweet up there.
What really happened with the Hunter Biden story, suppression by Twitter, will be published on Twitter at 5 p.m. Eastern. And then he replied to that tweet and said, "This will be awesome," and put an emoji of popcorn.
So when I saw this, you know what I did immediately? I said, "Gary, you've got to show this to Adam."
Well,
and explain why.
Well, let's okay. There's kind of two. There's two things, and the reason I'm a dog with a bone with certain things, and all roads lead to COVID. If you say I choose to wear a mask outdoors, and what you do is your business and none of my own, then I will say, okay, we agree to disagree, but some people wear a yarmulke and a hijab, and there's many things. Some people carry a rosary. But they don't attack you for not carrying a rosary. That's what I'm saying. And if somebody said, if Twitter or whomever, any of the big tech platforms or any of the 51 former heads of the CIA and the FBI signed off on this document, if they said, hey, we don't know. I mean, I don't have the laptop. What are the nuts and the bolts of it? If CNN and you can now, it's kind of a magical time we're living in because you can see a 2-minute string out of everyone from MSNBC and CNN just going, this has all the hallmarks and this is more and this needs to be ignored and whatever. And then you can go watch the COVID version of that with everybody from Fauci to the head of the CDC and the NIH and everyone to Biden and Kamala Harris going, you get vaccinated, you're not going to get COVID, you can't pass COVID. They make extended dance versions of all these tapes. They're hysterical to watch because normally, historically, when you watch people being wrong, you have to go back 60 years and have some governor of Alabama talking about why we need 2 drinking fountains in black and white.
Or Jerry Jones' picture when he was 15.
Yeah, this, you only have to go back 17 months to see all these idiots being wrong about everything. And the thing about the Hunter Biden laptop thing is it was so discernible. It was a laptop. It was dropped off. There was a receipt. It had his Hunter Biden's signature on it. It was sussable. It could have been sussed out. And if the powers that be, whether it be Twitter or whether it be CNN or MSNBC or LA Times or New York Times, if they were agnostic about it, if they said, look, we don't know, but they started yelling at people who did believe it, called them conspiracy theorists and, election deniers and dangerous and crackpots and stuff. Now it's time for the pound of flesh. And also, these people, whether you run Twitter or the New York Times or you're one of the 51 security experts, you headed the FBI. Intelligence expert.
Wait, boy, that's ironic.
Yes, you headed. You are a lot of things, but you're not stupid. You're not stupid. You cannot run Twitter. You cannot run the New York Times. You cannot be the former leader of the FBI, the CIA, and be stupid. So they're not stupid, and it's called stupid or liar. And if we can eliminate stupid, then all we're left with is liar. And I don't mind liar. That's right. It says it on the coaster.
It says it right on my coaster.
I
got it right here.
I do not mind liar. The problem with liar is once you lie, it's not enough for you just to lie. You must attack whoever disagrees with you and call them dangerous. And it was also interesting how insanely naive people are. I mean, I was watching Tony Bobulinski being interviewed on Tucker Carlson for an hour in 2020 of, September, beginning of October. And I was like, well, this guy sounds like a pretty credible witness to me. Then, of course, it had to be thrown out as conspiracy theories and, all that kind of stuff. But I'm a little more like this. Okay, the Hunter Biden laptop doesn't exist, except for it does exist because there's a receipt and a guy who's holding it. So you can't just say it doesn't really exist.
That's what I said originally. The reason I bought into it,
Giuliani.
Yeah, exactly. Because
right, and everybody.
Because I'm about as cynical when it comes to law enforcement as anybody, right?
Right. Well, but here's the other thing too that sort of it blends with COVID and shutting down outdoor dining and Hunter Biden laptop. You can't keep shouting at me that I'm nuts. You need to explain to me why this laptop has information on it that should not be believed. And show me the data for outdoor dining. Not yelling at me that I want to kill Nana. I want data. I want you to all sign this letter saying that this has all the earmarks of Russian collusion, and then explain how the Russians colluded by infiltrating his laptop. And then I also need a sort of general thought experiment. So they did all this before he dropped it off at the repair place to never pick it up, or they work for the repair place, or they somehow colluded with the owner of the repair place. Like I'm listening, but I need some meat on this bone. You can't just go Russian collusion. By the way, you just had 3 years of Steele dossier and Russian collusion that you wanted me. Adam Schiff every third Monday was on a CNN show explaining that there was another bombshell that was about to drop, and it never did. So I'm a little gun shy with your Russian collusion after 3 years of nonstop Russian collusion, but I am listening if you're willing to offer up a reasonable explanation, which nobody ever did.
And what do you think? You're going to make a prognostication? This will be talk about save the tape. As we tape this, we're 45 minutes away, 42 minutes away?
Yeah, that's about right.
42 minutes away. Any idea what you think he'll
it's
post?
East Coast, 5 o'clock.
It did say 5 p.m. Eastern, yeah.
Oh, Max Pattis yelled 5 o'clock or something from the thing, and I was like, oh, okay.
I might have interrupted him.
Yeah, you did. All right. I think, look, this wasn't organic. It existed. Like it was. So here's what we do know. We do know that
New York Post, right, that published the first article?
Yes.
And then very quickly right behind that was kind of a chorus.
The New York Post, their article was, their Twitter account was suspended. Now, number one.
I didn't remember that.
Yes, they suspended because it was hearsay. Except for these people have been printing hearsay for 3 years as it pertained to the Steele dossier and Russian collusion and Trump. So you can't hide behind we haven't vetted this when all you guys did was put unvetted stuff out.
So you would think that it's hearsay that he was doing golden showers on the bed with 2 hoes?
No, I have documentation of that. Yes.
That's for all my friends on my side of the aisle. Remember, we kind of went deep on that story,
but
didn't we?
You can't. If you're CNN or you're the New York Times, you cannot hide behind, we haven't vetted this, because you have been pushing out information that has been unvetted for a solid 3 or 4 years. So that's not an excuse. It is an excuse for reputable news organizations who don't do it, but you have a rich history of not doing it. So that's not. So And we know that Zuckerberg talked to Joe Rogan about being approached by the FBI and was sort of crafty about how that worked.
You could tell in that interview. I should have told Gary that we do everything so fluid here. You could see the wheels turning as he was talking to Rogan, couldn't you? Mm-hmm. Like, when they prepped me, they didn't prep me for that one, did they?
Right.
Hold on for 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Geico.
Yeah.
You know why they gave me this?
Spelled correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Do you own or rent your home? Sure you do. It can be hard work, really hard work. You know what's really easy? Bundling policies with Geico. Geico makes it easy to bundle your homeowners or your renter's insurance along with your auto policy. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around your home, right? Isn't owning a home like the license to be a custodian?
Yes.
Go to geico.com.
Unpaid custodian.
Unpaid custodian, exactly. A volunteer custodian.
That's right.
Get a quote. See how much you would save. It's Geico, Geico, easy. Geico. Visit geico.com today. That's Geico.com.
So the question is what is there? Right. And I don't know how much people cover their tracks. But look, here's what we know. We know that Twitter was in the hip pocket of Biden. They were pulling hard for Biden. So it logically makes sense that they would attempt to smooth over and or cover up, anything that might hurt his chances of being elected, especially a couple of weeks before the election.
Do you ever I'm just going to segue for 1 second. You ever thought about the irony of Elon Musk, who started off as kind of he's kind of an iconic figure on the left with the Tesla, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Aren't the people who are buying the Tesla or driving the Tesla, my wife, your ex-wife, the Tesla kind of fit you go in La Cañada. As I'm walking in the morning, you can't get 30 seconds without seeing 2 of them, right?
Right.
Okay. So there's that. And now, as soon as he gets Twitter and starts saying a couple of things and becoming, I saw a whole thing last night about Musk, Trump. That's
right.
the axis of evil.
Yeah.
Now,
I have a couple things, and you tell me from because of what you do, and what you do has a sort of legal nuts and bolts sides, statutes, and cases that came before and stuff. But there's also kind of an emotional spiritual kind of here's how I want you to dress, here's how I want you to act. Don't act this way.
Trial is layered. It's certainly not. I mean, that's why generally most trial lawyers are not, the summa cum laude at the Ivy League.
Yeah, you're a scholar, but you don't. That's not. It's kind of like, I would call it like a good play-by-play guy. You have to know sports, but you're not a sports nerd because your personality as well. There's kind of two parts of you that are necessary for that. And the fact that everyone, Alyssa Milano and beyond, who were formerly huge fans of Elon Musk, who are now attacking Elon Musk, before Elon Musk has done anything, but simply saying, I want to open the platform up to an open dialogue, suggests to me that methinks thou protest too much.
Well, somebody should.
There's no way. Look, you could be mildly concerned about Elon Musk buying Twitter, but if you're doing a pants on fire, hair on fire, crazy run in the street, I'm going to pull myself off the platform, this guy's Hitlerian and evil, that suggests that you are protesting more than the commensurate amount that you should. But it also suggests to me that even though you were saying Twitter was just calling balls and strikes, it also suggests to me that you knew that they were an umpire that was on your team.
Well, maybe Gary can find this for a second. Speaking of Alyssa Milano, she, I think, famously tweeted, unless somebody mocked this up and it's phony, that I sold my Tesla because of this.
She didn't sell it. She turned it in. That's a more definitive protest.
And then she went and got a German-made VW electric.
But she didn't.
Which, by the way, who promoted the VW?
Adolf Hitler.
Yeah. I mean, somebody's got to filter some of these things or do like
they need to vet them.
Mark, do you know about her tweet from a few years back where she posited to Twitter 4 people you would have dinner with, dead or alive?
No.
Hers were Jesus, Roberto Clemente, John Lennon, Elon Musk.
Wow.
She loved Musk.
Yeah.
Now she hates Musk. Everyone hates Musk. Everyone on The View hates Musk. Everyone on Morning Joe hates Musk. But you guys are protesting too much and showing your hand because it's essentially, I always do the what's in the trunk thing, and it's you sitting there going, you're driving and you got your girlfriend in the passenger side and the cop comes around and says, what's in the trunk? And you panic and yell, don't believe that bitch. She's a liar. Like, that makes me think you think there's something in the trunk. If you just go, I don't know, tell her what's in the trunk. We'll see how this goes. Like, you should be agnostic about Twitter like you should have been with Hunter Biden's laptop. You should go, I don't know, let him run the company. Let's see how this shakes out. Or he seems like a smart guy to me. Or I don't think he's into suppressing any speech. The fact that you're going nuts means you're protesting too much, means that Twitter was doing your bidding, which also means that during this document dump, if we're going to call it that, there may be some objectionable things in there. Now, here's a question for you, Mark. Put on your lawyer hat for this, and it'll be my final one. The stuff that is dumped by Elon Musk as it pertains to suppression of Hunter Biden's laptop, there could be it could be a 3 or 4, or it could be a 8 or a 9. At a certain point, if it is 8s and 9s, if there's a lot of internal documents saying we can't do this, we have to discredit anybody that did this, we have to make sure, I mean, all the way it could say we need Joe Biden elected, we got to take Trump down or whatever. At what point does it raise to the level of election tampering? Like
legally, it won't.
We have a lot of rules about that.
Unless there's something in there. Unless there's something in there, I don't even want to speculate. I could hypothetically come up with something that could be high, that would be at an 8 or a 9 or even a 10. I mean, if you had somebody who was, especially given the current coming composition of the House, I could see where there would be something that would be highly incriminating to somebody who should not have been doing it. Is that
if there was direct communication, let's say, between the Biden camp and Twitter and who knows, Facebook or whatever.
I don't think that would be that much. But if there was, there was all kinds of people who were kind of anti-Trump at the time. If those people were in governmental positions and the governmental position was connected to something like this, then I can see where there would be some potential liability.
In terms of meeting the standard for
there's
tampering
all kinds of
with
government regulations, codes of conduct, things like that. If somebody was working from inside the government to there, if that was the A to B, that I could see a prosecutor, if he was emboldened, doing something with that.
Well, I'll go a little different angle, which is they have rules, which is, I think, and I'm not going to send Gary down a rabbit hole here, but there are rules which basically says if Howard Stern wants to run for governor of New York, he's going to have to suspend himself from his own radio show for 6 months leading into the race because he is not allowed to have the unfair advantage of having a microphone.
Just happened to Dr. Oz. He had to take his show off the air before he did his Senate run.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Example.
Okay, there you go. Well, and you say, why is that? Well, because this person has a platform, and that gives them an unfair advantage over the guy who's running against him who doesn't have that platform. They're both free to buy a billboard, but they can't have that platform. Well, if you can draw a straight line between the Biden administration and Twitter, that's a hell of a platform to have.
Correct, except this is pre-election. Presumably, I'm assuming this is all
pre-election.
Pre-election,
but Dr. Oz is pre-election too.
Correct, but presumably, Trump's in office up until 2020. They're suppressing the argument is hypothetically they're suppressing the laptop story. So, if somebody in government is doing that, that's where I see the liability. The post, I guess, in defense of you or your theory, if it's post-January and the inauguration and they're doing stuff, that's a real problem. That's potentially a real problem. So I guess we'd have to see, is it pre the election, post the election, post-inauguration?
But isn't obviously the laptop was pre the election.
Laptop was pre the election, but we don't know what the dates are in the documents that he's about to dump.
So the difference is the Biden campaign versus Biden installed administration.
Yeah.
Right. But much like Dr. Oz not having that platform
that's an
before
interesting thing
the
on
election.
Dr. Oz. What if Adam Carolla ran for office in California?
Mm-hmm.
Would Adam Carolla and Carolla Studios have to shut down? I don't think so. I don't think that there's any way that they could say you have to get off the air because you are your own entity. Dr. Oz, I could see the distinction being, well, he's carried or syndicated on all of these stations that are regulated by the FCC. But since when you're not regulated by the FCC, that's why you went freelance.
I don't know that they make that distinction. I assume that whoever you're running against would raise their hand and make us think
tell
about
them to
it.
Do your own podcast. You go start your own studio, find Gary, find Emmy, and you will see what you can do.
Well, they want to have a successful podcast. So they're going to have to go to ZipRecruiter. But I get what you're saying. You're just looking at it. Yeah. All right. You can go to AdamCarolla.com. I'll be in Tucson, Arizona at the Rialto Theater December 15th. And then we're all heading out to Tempe to the Improv doing stand-up shows and live podcasts there. And then Philly, January 6th and 7th at Helium. Just go to AdamCarolla.com, and me and John Popper working blue in Dallas, doing live shows, doing meet and greets. It's a whole weekend hang. It's like a cruise, but in Dallas at the Sheraton. What do you got, Mark?
Well, I'm going to plug your show for next week, Adam and Drew. I sit in for you while you're traveling the country. And ironically, Drew and I talk for at least one or two of the episodes about the constitutional strict scrutiny versus rational basis as applied to COVID and vaccines and things. Ninth Circuit just came out with a case, literally as you and I are sitting here, that went through it. So it's I'll give you a little precursor. It's worth a listen.
So, till next time, Adam Carolla for Mark, Hard Out, Short Window, Garrigus, Soft Taco, saying Mahala.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.